The Old Hollow Hills House. Chapter 1, A Change in Time. There is a house on May Lane Drive that would scare you just by passing by. The house is old, painted black and white, and when you walk by, you can see the ghosts inside. The yard looks like a dungeon, waiting to be seen by those who may walk in with the key. The house is waiting for Brenda to come home with a box to move into her new home. Who is Brenda, you ask? Brenda is a lovely woman who stands 5 feet 5 inches, with brown hair, blue eyes, and soft, silky white skin. She loves to dress up when she goes out. Brenda knows us well. We live in the house where she dwells. We are the ghosts, Mr. and Mrs. Mathis. We've known her since she was a kid, growing up and running around, watching people put her down. A shameful thing, but that's life. We saw her when she would cry, and while her friends would just pass right by. She has seen us a time or two. Me and my wife would smile and say, "How do you do?" She got to know us like the back of her hand. When she would come in, she would say, "Hey man." She has a gift of seeing things, sensing, and knowing within her range. She is the sweetest woman you will ever know. Brenda had to leave us, me and my wife, because there was another demon inside the house, one that was hurting Brenda too much. So, me and my wife told Brenda it might be better if she moved because we didn't want her to be hurt more than she had been. The demon comes and goes, but there's no telling when it might show. Me and my wife were scared for Brenda, so we helped keep the demon away until she moved. We told her we would miss her and that we loved her. "Peace be on your way and with love from us forevermore," we said to Brenda as she loaded her car on a dark and stormy night to move into her new home on Hollow Hill Drive. Before Brenda arrived at her new house while loading her belongings into the car, she thought back to when she was a child, wishing things could have stayed the same, but knowing now that they could never be the same. As a child, Brenda had it hard, being the only child of a single parent, with the other dead and gone. She had it rough, always left alone. Other people were always watching her, and there was no mommy or daddy to sit and sing her a song or read a book to make her fall asleep at night. My mom would work all the time, Brenda thought, never had time to do fun things like other kids. So now here I am, fully grown, and no one to call my own. Such a sad life for me, having to leave this house and move to another place. I'll miss you too, Mr. and Mrs. Mathis. Take care, you two, and maybe one day I'll see you again soon. With that, Brenda got in her car and drove to Hollow Hill to make a brand new start. Chapter 2. Moving in the storm was bad that night. The wind blew the car all over the road, and Brenda held the wheel with both hands. While listening to the radio, the newsman said, "Severe thunderstorms are moving in. Please be careful if you're on the road tonight. Flash flooding in different parts of the area." So Brenda changed the channel to music. As she drove down the road, she heard Barry White. While singing along with Barry, she started up the road to the house. As soon as she topped the hill on her way to the house, the radio changed itself to a creepy song she had never heard before. She looked at the radio, pulled the car to the side of the road and said, "Huh? What is this?" She had never heard that song before. She changed the channel back to Barry White, but Barry was already gone. Shaking her head, she decided to drive on to the house. She started up the hillside toward the old Hollow Hill house and pulled in, cutting the car off. While sitting there in the car, she looked at the place through the pouring rain. The house was a 2-story home on the hillside with dark black siding and gargoyles on each side. She thought, man, it's wild looking, as she sat in the car, still in the pouring rain. She stared a little longer before deciding to move in. The dark black fence running down the sides of the house looked like hands reaching out to invite her in. She sat in the car and smiled. Finally, Brenda got out into the rain, walked to the back of the car, and started to unload. As she was unloading her things, she looked up at one of the gargoyles. Its eyes turned dark black, like someone was watching her. She picked up a box and started up the steps. She looked up again at the gargoyle, and its eyes had returned to normal, the blackness gone. She set the box down, unlocked the door, then reached down to pick up the box and walked inside, smiling. She continued unloading all her things from the car and smiled after she was done. "Man, what a day," she said to herself. Brenda shut the door behind her and started to unpack, smiling all the way. Chapter 3. The Unpacking. Brenda got everything inside set and put into place. She sat down in her chair and pulled up an ottoman to rest her feet on. A nice, warm, toasty fire burned while she sipped a little wine and read a good mystery novel. Wrapped up in a blanket, she relaxed, enjoying her book. As she continued reading, she heard a sound upstairs. Bing, bang, boom! She stopped reading and said, "Hello? Anyone there?" There was no answer, and then the sound stopped. Brenda figured it must have been the wind because she remembered leaving the window open upstairs while moving her stuff. So she went back to reading her book, getting so absorbed that she lost track of time. When she looked at the clock, she exclaimed, "Oh no, it's time for bed." Brenda put down her book, finished the rest of her wine, put out the fire, and started up the stairs to go to bed. As she was walking up the stairs, she heard a voice downstairs in the same place where she had been sitting earlier. The voice said, "We will get that low-down, dirty dog tonight." Brenda froze, putting her hand to her mouth, too scared to move. She couldn't believe what she had heard. She hurried upstairs and locked the door, terrified to go back down. She sat on the bed wondering how someone had gotten into the house. She picked up the phone and called the cops. The dispatcher answered, "Ma'am, someone will be there right away. Please stay where you are." Brenda replied, "Okay, I'll stay in this room. I'm on the second level of the house." "All right, ma'am. Officers are on the way." Brenda walked to the door and put her ear against it but heard nothing. She waited anxiously until she heard a knock on the door. "Ma'am, are you there? This is the police." Brenda responded, "Yes, I'm here," as she shouted out the window. The police entered the house and searched the place, but no one was there except Brenda. The officers came upstairs and knocked on her door. She opened it and they said, "Ma'am, no one is here. We checked the entire house. You're alone." Brenda thanked the officers for their help, walked them downstairs and let them out the door. "Have a great night, ma'am." "You too, officers," Brenda said. As she closed the door behind them, she thought to herself, "I wonder where those voices came from." She walked upstairs, trying to reassure herself. Must have been the wind. As she got into bed, she kept thinking, it had to be the wind, before finally drifting off to sleep. Chapter 4. The Awakening. Brenda woke up to the sound of rain beating on the window. She looked outside and said, "Man, what a rainy day." While standing at the window, she saw the mailman run by, so she threw on her robe, darted down the stairs and opened the door. As she ran to get her mail, she bumped into a man standing there holding it. Brenda screamed, "Aha!" The man jumped back and said, "Are you okay?" Brenda, her heart racing, replied, "Yeah, I'm okay. You just took me by surprise. I was coming to get my mail." The man smiled. "Well, I saw it was raining, so I grabbed it for you. I also saw someone else in your window." Brenda froze. "What other person? It's just me here." The man looked confused. "That's strange. I swear I saw someone." Brenda brushed it off. "It's fine. So what's your name?" she asked. "My name is Mike," he said. Brenda smiled. "Hi, Mike. Want to come in?" Mike said, "Sure, thanks." And they sat down and started talking. They shared stories about themselves. "So what do you do for a living?" Mike asked. "I'm an artist," Brenda replied. "I sold 4 paintings last year for $300 each." Mike smiled. "That's amazing. Maybe sometime you can do one for me." "Yeah, I'd love to," Brenda said with a grin. Mike continued, "I work at a warehouse not far from here, called Michael's Warehouse. I've been there for over 9 years. Brenda sat quietly admiring him. "He's so handsome," she thought to herself. His dark black hair, big blue eyes and hard chest, which she could see through his shirt along with his tan, made him look incredibly attractive. Brenda couldn't help but think, what a sweet guy. Mike asked, "Are you married?" Brenda shook her head. "No, I've never been married." Mike checked his watch. "Oh my, I've got to run. Lots to do around my house. But here's my number. Call me anytime." Brenda smiled. "Thanks, Mike, and thanks for bringing the mail. I'm sorry I scared you like that." Mike chuckled. "No problem. Have a great day, Brenda." "You too, Mike," she said as he walked out into the rain. As Brenda closed the door, she checked her mail. Most of it was junk, except for one red card with a picture of a hand holding a heart on the front. She flipped it over and read the message. "Watch yourself in that house." Brenda dropped the card, thinking it was some kind of cruel joke. She threw it in the trash, poured herself a glass of wine and muttered, "I'm going to take a bath and forget all this." Upstairs, she undressed and ran a nice hot bath, turning on the radio. Barry White played and she smiled as she sang along. As she relaxed in the tub, she suddenly felt something cold brush against her arm, like someone was touching her. She jumped out of the tub, grabbed a towel and wrapped it around herself. Wiping the steam off the mirror, she turned around when a soft voice whispered in her ear, "Please help me." Brenda froze, too scared to move. She closed her eyes and felt cold air rush up and down her body. The cold feeling then slipped under the door like a draft. Brenda collapsed to her knees, crying, not knowing what to do. She slowly got up, threw on whatever clothes she could find, and ran downstairs to call Mike. But the phone was dead. She dropped the phone and started to cry again. Then she heard a sound. Picking the phone back up, she said, "Hello? Anyone there?" But there was no sound. Then she heard it again. "Please help me." Brenda hung up the phone and ran out into the rain to Mike's house. She knocked frantically on his door. Mike opened the door. "Hey, Brenda, are you okay?" Brenda, still shaken, replied, "No, can I come in?" Mike let her in and she sat down. He asked again, "Are you all right?" Brenda started telling Mike what had happened. Mike stood up and walked to the fireplace, glancing out the window at her house. "Brenda, I have to tell you something about that house." He stopped mid-sentence. "What? What about the house?" Brenda asked. Mike paused. "It might be the old wiring in the house," he said. "If you want, I can come over and check it out for you." Brenda nodded, though uncertain. "Maybe. It could just be the wiring and my mind playing tricks on me. Call me if you need anything," Mike said. "Thanks, Mike," Brenda replied as she started out the door and walked back home through the rain. As she climbed the steps, she kept telling herself, "It has to be the wind. It's just my mind playing games." Chapter 5, Coming Back Home. Brenda walks back in, pulls up an ottoman, and grabs herself a glass of wine from the kitchen. She walks over, grabs a blanket from the back of the chair, and takes her favorite book off the shelf. Brenda sits back in her chair, sets her book on the stand, and places her wine beside it. She pulls the ottoman close, sets her feet on it, leans back and wraps the blanket around her legs and feet. She reaches over, grabs her book, and starts reading her mystery novel, softly sipping her wine and smiling to herself, thinking, "This is great." As she continues reading, she looks up and notices the TV is on. She thinks, what in the world is going on? So she stops reading, gets up, and walks over to change the channel. She says, "Well, I'll watch TV then," and switches it to a good romance movie. She sits back down in the chair and falls asleep, dreaming. In her dream, she is in the house, but the outside is white, with roses all over the front yard. She sees herself sitting on the porch, holding a glass of tea in a swing. Mike is walking up with roses to give her to put in her vase. Mike gives her the flowers and sits down next to her, leaning over to give her a kiss. As Brenda leans over to kiss him back, Mike transforms into a ghostly man, dressed in a Civil War outfit, as white as a sheet with dark black eyes, darker than a lump of coal. Brenda wakes up screaming, "Ah!" Her heart is racing at 90 miles a minute. "Man, what a dream," she says. Brenda gets up from her chair, walks over to turn off the TV, and heads to the kitchen to get a drink. She reaches up to get a glass from the cabinet, but when she opens the door, a rat jumps out, making Brenda scream again. She drops the glass, shattering it on the floor, and stands there clutching her chest, saying, "Man, I give up. I'm going to bed." Brenda leaves the kitchen and heads up the stairs to her bedroom. She walks in, gets ready for bed, and forgets about the broken glass on the floor. She walks over to the window, looks out and says, "Lord, give me a good night's rest, please." She walks to the door, locks it, climbs into bed, closes her eyes and falls asleep. Chapter 6. The new day, Brenda wakes up and sits up in her bed, sitting and looking out the window. The sun is shining. She gets up and walks over to the window and looks out. She sees a bird building a nest out in the tree. Brenda smiles and walks back from the window and starts over to the door and unlocks it. She walks downstairs and walks into the kitchen, and the glass was gone, but she had forgotten that she dropped a glass on the floor before sleeping. She walks over and starts fixing breakfast, and she stops, thinking. No sounds, no funny things going on. She smiles, thinking in her head, yes. So she finishes fixing breakfast and sets her plate down, then walks over to get some coffee to drink and sits down to eat. After finishing breakfast, she grabs her robe and slippers and walks down to the mailbox. As she starts back up the walkway, she looks over and sees some guy watching her out his window. She walks on and looks over again, and he's still looking. So she turns and waves at him to come out. The man walks out. What you need, he says. Brenda smiles. How are you, she says. I'm fine, in a bad mood, the man says. Brenda says, what is your name? My name is Brenda. What is your name? My name is Mr. Johnson, and I've lived here all my life. And please don't make no sound, like partying, please. Brenda says, Mr. Johnson, you have nothing to worry about. I don't party at all, trust me. Mr. Johnson says, well, I'm just telling you, no partying or I'll call the cops. Being so mean and nasty. Mr. Johnson walks back inside. Brenda says, huh, how rude. She thought, but paid him no mind and walked back inside. So Brenda walks into the kitchen and sits down at the kitchen chair and starts looking at her mail. She opens up a letter from Mike, smiling. It reads, Dear Brenda, I hope to see you tonight. Please come to my house around 7 p.m. I want to fix you dinner and more. Love, Mike. Brenda smiles and sets the rest of the mail to the side and runs upstairs to get ready. So Brenda gets upstairs and jumps in the shower and cleans herself up well, putting on her perfume. She walks from there, singing to herself, and walks to the other room to get dressed. She steps back into her long black and red dress, tight and fitted in all the right places, and puts on red high heels. She walks over and stands in front of the mirror and holds up a gold necklace with a sun in the middle. So Brenda walks downstairs and picks up the phone and calls Mike. The phone rings, ring, ring, and she hears someone pick up. Hello? Mike, yes, this is Brenda. Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, come on over. Okay, I'll be there. So Brenda locks up and walks over to Mike's house. Brenda walks up to the door. Knock, knock. Mike opens the door. Wow, Brenda, you look wonderful. And may I say, you look like a rose. So soft to the touch and tender to hold. Brenda smiles and her face turns red. Mike says, You're blushing, Brenda. Oh no, I'm fine, she says, smiling. So Mike says, Come in. I've got some wine in the living room and steaks on the grill cooking for tonight. If you would like, there are some CDs over on the side if you want to pop one in. Okay, Brenda says. So Brenda walks over and puts on Barry White and slowly moves back and forth to the music. Mike walks into the room. I see you like Barry White. Oh yes, she says. Mike smiles. Dinner's almost done. Want to walk out on the deck? Would love to, Brenda says. She walks out and looks. She can see her backyard from his back deck. Brenda watches the sunset across the hillside. Oh, how lovely, Brenda says. Yeah, I love coming out here and sitting in my deck chair and watching the sunsets while drinking a nice glass of iced tea, Mike says. So Mike finishes the steaks. They're done, he says. Great, Brenda says, smiling. Mike walks in with the steaks and makes a plate for Brenda, sets it down, and walks back to fix himself a plate. Brenda walks in and sits down, praying over her food. Mike sits down and waits until Brenda is done praying to eat. So Brenda and Mike sit and eat and talk more about themselves. After dinner, Brenda says, That was the best dinner I have ever had in my life. So good. Mike says, I hoped you would like it. I used an old family secret recipe we used to cook the steaks. Brenda says, Tastes great, and the wine went perfectly with the meal. Thank you, Mike says to Brenda. So would you like to sit and watch a movie? Yeah, would love to, Brenda says to Mike. So Brenda and Mike sit down on the couch and watch a romantic movie. Brenda snuggles up to Mike, and Mike moves closer to Brenda. She looks up at Mike and looks into his eyes, and he looks back. He leans over, slowly moving closer to each other's lips, softly kissing and holding each other in the soft candlelight and the TV on. He reaches over and presses the remote off, softly moving their hands on their faces, kissing and holding. Brenda stops. What, Brenda? Why did you stop, hun? I can't do this. She gets up and walks outside onto the porch. Mike gets up and runs after her. Brenda, don't go. I can't do this, Mike. Not right now, okay? Okay, I understand. I should have stopped. I'm sorry. We can go slow. Okay, Brenda says. So Mike walks Brenda home, gets her to the door and says, Brenda, I want to read you this poem from my heart, okay? Brenda says, okay, read it, hun. So Mike reads the poem, The Soft Red Rose. Soft to the touch of a red, red rose. Soft to the skin like diamonds and gems. Roses are soft and silky to touch all over your skin. Brenda smiles and says, I'll call you, and winks at Mike and walks inside, slowly shutting the door. Mike smiles, saying in his mind, I know she really likes me. Mike walks down the steps and down the street and walks into his house. Brenda walks over to the couch and lays back thinking, wow, what a night I have had. Brenda falls asleep, smiling, and dreams of her and Mike in her dreams, making love till morning, dreaming. Chapter 7. Thinking happy days. Brenda wakes up and gets out of bed, turns and raises her arms to stretch. She turns back and starts to make the bed. She walks out the door and starts down the stairs to make breakfast. Brenda walks over to the stove and turns it on, walks to the refrigerator, and opens the door to get eggs and bacon to fix for breakfast. So Brenda grabs the eggs and bacon and milk for the eggs and starts fixing breakfast. Brenda opens the window to let the hot air out of the kitchen. Mike had his window open and he woke up smelling Brenda's breakfast. He wakes up, looks out the window and yells, Brenda, can I come over for breakfast? Brenda walks to the window. Yeah, come on over, she says back to him. So Mike runs and gets dressed, runs down the sidewalk and goes to her door. He rings the doorbell. Brenda walks and opens the door. Hi, Brenda, may I come in? Brenda smiles. Yeah, I got breakfast done. Mike walks into the kitchen and his eyes almost pop out of his head. Mike sees eggs, bacon, pancakes, orange juice, coffee, and toast. Man, he thought, and a rose in a vase, how nice. She even had the newspaper waiting. How sweet, Mike says to Brenda. This is so lovely. Brenda, do you like what I did for you for breakfast? Mike, yes, I love it, Brenda. You did a wonderful job on this breakfast. My hat's off to you, hun. Mike sat down and started eating. And Brenda sat down next to Mike, eating also. Mike picks up the newspaper while eating, reading it. Brenda sits while eating and smiles, thinking, this can be my new life. Mike stops eating. What's wrong, Mike? Brenda says. Wow, Mike says. Brenda says, what, Mike? Listen to this. Someone got a red letter in the mail saying, watch yourself in that house. Brenda stops eating. What else does it say? Brenda asks. It says the person who got it turned it over to the cops, and the cops are investigating the letter. Brenda goes, wow, that's weird, she says. But in her head, she knows she got one too in the mail, wondering why it was sent. Mike looks at Brenda and says, Brenda, you okay? Brenda says, yes, I'm fine. He says, Brenda, you look like you've seen a ghost. Brenda says, don't be silly, I'm fine. After breakfast, Brenda decides to wash the dishes. Mike walks over to Brenda. Need some help? Oh, I'm fine. You can go in the living room and watch some TV. I'll be there in a minute, almost done with the dishes, Brenda says. Mike says, okay. He sits down and starts watching a horror movie. Mike leans back on the couch and relaxes. About that time, Brenda walks in with something to drink. Oh, thanks, Brenda, she smiles. You're welcome. In the movie, the woman goes up the stairs and hears a sound. Hello? Anyone there? Brenda starts thinking back about what happened to her in the house. Brenda says, Mike, I need to sit outside for a minute. Mike says, you okay, Brenda? She says, yes, I'm fine. Just need some air. It's a little hot. Mike says, okay, I'll be right here, Brenda. Okay, I'll be right back, Mike. So Brenda walks outside and takes a deep breath, thinking, what should I do about the house? Brenda sits on the swing outside. While sitting on the couch, getting into the horror movie, the next thing you know, a voice came out from upstairs. Please help me. Mike turns down the volume. Brenda, is that you? No sound. So Mike turns the volume back up, and again the voice comes back. Please help me. About that time, Mike gets up and walks to the steps. Anyone there? The voice softly speaks again. Please help me. Mike starts up the steps. Anyone up there? Thinking it might be Brenda. And all at once, a man on a horse comes flying down the steps saying, I'll get you, low-down dirty dog, and went right through him and disappeared. Mike froze up, unable to move from the steps. Mike slowly turns around, and about that time, Brenda walks in the door. Mike, you okay? You look pale, like you've seen a ghost. Mike says, Yes, I saw a ghost on a horse. Mike freaks out, runs for the door, and runs home. Brenda stood with a blank look on her face, speechless, not knowing what to say. She walks to the couch, sits down, and cries. She gets up from the couch and walks to the phone. She calls Mike. The phone rings. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. Brenda was worried about Mike. Brenda walks over to Mike's house. Mike was gone. His new truck was not in the driveway. Brenda walks back home crying and upset. She walks in, looking down, crying. She sees a letter. Brenda picks it up. It says, Dear Brenda, please meet me tonight at the mailbox around 9 p.m. Need to talk. Signed, Mystery. Brenda shakes her head, wondering who it is and what they wanted. She thinks to herself, only 9 p.m. will tell. Chapter 8. The Mystery Person. Brenda walks inside with the letter. As she walks in, she looks around, but nothing. Darkness comes fast once she gets inside. The darkness comes over the house like two hands covering it, and the moon comes out. Brenda sits down and waits. It's almost 9 p.m., just 5 minutes before, so Brenda decides to walk to the mailbox to wait for the person. The clouds roll in fast with fog, so Brenda brings a flashlight. Walking down the side of the hill toward the mailbox, she trips over something. She looks down but can't see anything in the fog, so she gets up and keeps walking. She hears footsteps behind her. Walking, crack, pop, a stick breaks. Brenda stops walking. She turns around and yells out, Anyone there? No answer. Brenda gets a little scared, but she keeps going. She still hears the sounds behind her, like someone is walking behind her. Brenda's heart starts racing. She gets this bad feeling, like that horror movie she watched the other night but didn't get to finish. She starts to lightly pick up the pace, walking faster. The thing behind her stops. Brenda, thinking it might have been in her head, reaches the mailbox and stands waiting. She checks her watch. 9 o'clock, right on time, she says. Where is this person? While waiting, she flashes the flashlight into the woods to see if she can spot anything. Something runs right by her fast, like a flash. Brenda turns around quickly and yells, Hello! Anyone there? No answer. Brenda starts to back away, getting scared. Brenda yells out, If this is you, Mike, this is not funny. Come out now. Nothing. Then all at once, a cold, chilling feeling creeps up her back. Afraid to turn around to see what it is, she says, Please don't hurt me. She hears in her ear, You must leave that house. It is filled with demons and old Civil War men. You must leave. Brenda says, Can I see you? In a deep voice it says, No, stand still. They may be watching us. Brenda feels cold chills run down her back. Then all at once the cold chills leave and the voice is gone. She turns with the flashlight, but nothing is there. It's gone. Brenda runs to the house and locks the door behind her. Breathing hard, she runs upstairs, locks the door behind her, jumps into bed and thinks, This is a bad dream. This is a bad dream. She reaches over to pick up the phone from her nightstand and calls Mike. The phone rings. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. Brenda says, Okay, puts down the phone and lays down, closing her eyes to go to sleep. She had a hard time shaking the thought of that voice, so deep and unfamiliar, but eventually she falls asleep. While Brenda is asleep, the spirits decide to take a trip next door to Mr. Johnson's house, waiting for him to come home. He was asleep in his bed, dreaming sweet dreams. Meanwhile, the ghost of Mr. Mark Smith, who had died in the Civil War while serving his country, appeared. He was fighting in the war, went missing, and was later found dead behind enemy lines. The ghost went under Mr. Johnson's mattress, and suddenly Mr. Johnson's feet got really hot. Then he felt a heartbeat under him. Mr. Johnson jumped from the bed and raised the mattress to see what was causing it. Then he saw a flickering white light and said, What the? At once, the ghost grabbed him by the throat and pulled him into the bed. The mattress fell back down like it had never been moved at all. Mr. Johnson was gone. The next morning, Brenda walks outside to get her mail and sees the cops there. Brenda runs over to ask the cops what's going on. The cop says to Brenda, "I can't tell you a lot, ma'am, but he came up missing, and all we can find is a letter saying, 'Get out of the house.'" "Makes no sense to me," the cop says to Brenda. All at once, Brenda drops her mail and runs to Mike's house. Mike left a note on the door saying he will be back tonight around 9. Something came up. Brenda sits on his porch wondering where he went, so she runs into her house to get something to drink and then goes back to Mike's house to sit. Mike shows up a little before 9 o'clock. "Brenda, what are you doing here?" Mike asks. "Mike, something has happened to Mr. Johnson. He's gone." "For real?" Mike says. "Yeah, they couldn't find him anywhere, except for this note saying, 'Get out of the house.'" Mike says nothing. Brenda looks at Mike. "You okay, Mike?" "Yeah." "Would you like to stay the night here, Brenda?" "Yes, please, Mike. I'm too scared to go back home to go to bed." "That's cool," Mike says. "Come in." "Thanks," Brenda says. So they walk into the house. Chapter 9, Lost Soul. Mike sits in bed wondering why all this was happening to him. This never happened until Brenda came into town. This is so weird, he thinks. While Mike is in the other room, Brenda is looking out the window at the house. Why is this happening to me? I never did anything wrong. About that time, Brenda sees a flash of light in the house. She thinks, "What in the world is that?" She raises up and the light comes toward Mike's room. Brenda pulls the covers over her mouth, thinking, "They're coming to get me now." Brenda sits there in fright. The light turns to darkness, and then she hears that voice again. "It's me. I told you, but you didn't listen to me." Brenda freaks out, saying, "Who are you? Please tell me. I'm scared and afraid. Please tell me who you are." The voice comes again. "You know me." "Where do I know you from?" Brenda says. The voice says, "All your stuff is in me." Brenda drops the covers, saying, "Oh my goodness. You're scared." "The house?" The voice says, "Yes," and softly whispers it in her ear. "But why do you scare me all the time? And my new boyfriend?" The voice comes back. "I can't say why right now, maybe later." And the voice was gone. Brenda sits with her mouth dropped open, saying, "Why is this happening again?" She still wonders to herself why the house left so fast before she could ask questions. Brenda gets up, looks out the window, and sees the house. The gargoyles turn their heads and see her, with more demonic black eyes than they had before. When Brenda sees that, she grabs the curtains really fast and pulls them together. She peeks through the curtains, and they look normal. She walks away from the curtains and jumps into bed, saying to herself, "This is a nightmare, that's all. Everything will be the way it should be tomorrow." Thinking in her head, Yeah, Mr. Johnson will be home, and everything will go back to normal." So Brenda falls asleep, thinking everything will be all right. The next morning, Brenda wakes up, and Mike is asleep on the couch. She walks to the kitchen, starts some coffee, and decides to get a cup from the cabinet. She starts to close it and sees Mr. Johnson in her yard, pointing at her saying, "Leave this place." He was white as a ghost, and his eyes were as dark as night. Brenda drops the cup. Mike jumps from the couch. "What's going on?" Brenda stands crying. Mike looks at Brenda, then looks outside but doesn't see anything. "You okay, Brenda?" "No, I saw Mr. Johnson outside in my yard, white as a ghost, pointing at me saying, 'Leave this place.'" Mike bends down and starts cleaning up the broken cup from the floor. He turns to Brenda. "It's okay." He walks over, dumps the broken cup in the trash, and shuts the window blinds. "There," he says. "Don't worry, I'm here for you." Brenda smiles and calms down. "It's okay, hon. Let me fix breakfast for us, okay?" "All right," Brenda says. So Mike starts fixing breakfast. Brenda sits in the living room watching TV. She watches the news. The newsman says the high will be in the 90s today. Brenda says, "Wow, Mike, it's going to be in the 90s today." No answer. Brenda says it again. Still no answer. She gets up and says, walking around the corner, "Mike, is everything okay?" Mike is gone. She starts yelling, "Mike! Mike! Mike!" Running from room to room, There was no one in the house but her. About that time, she runs into the living room and runs into him. "Where were you?" Crying. "What's wrong? Why are you crying again?" "I was talking to you and no answer. And I ran through the house and there was no answer." "It's okay, Brenda, honey. I went to the mailbox to get the mail, that's all. I heard you yelling, so I ran to see what was wrong. I thought a ghost got you. I can't live without you. I love you, Mike." She smiles and hugs Mike. "I love you too, Brenda." They slowly kiss one another. Then the toast popped up. "Oh, I finished breakfast. Come, let's eat." So Mike and Brenda went to go eat breakfast at the table. Chapter 10, The Passing. They sit down to eat breakfast. Mike says to Brenda, "I've got something to tell you, Brenda." "What's that, Mike?" "I've wanted to tell you before, but I never got the chance. I was worried that something might happen to me if I told you." "What, Mike?" Brenda says. "That house is filled with old Civil War men. I would see them in the yard at night, looking around at the house, and they even looked at mine. It really scared me. That's why I never said anything to you before about it. And the man in the window, I thought it was someone with you. I had no idea it was a ghost. I'm so sorry, Brenda. I feel so stupid." "No, don't feel stupid. You had no idea until I told you. I thought they were in my head too, but I never said anything to anyone," Brenda says. "I was ashamed to let you go so long in the house and never say anything about it." "It's okay, Mike. I don't blame you. There was something weird that happened to me last night in your room." "What?" Mike said. "What happened?" "Well, I was laying down and the window was open and I saw a light come in and a voice come to me saying it was the house." "The house?" Mike said. "Huh, that doesn't make sense." Mike paused. Why didn't I think of this before?" "What?" Brenda said. "You said the house talked to you, right?" "Yeah," Brenda said. "Why, Mike?" "Well, want to know what I think?" "Yeah," Brenda said. "Well, you might not like it." "Tell me," Brenda said. "I think the house is alive." "Alive," Brenda said. "Yes," Mike says. But why would the house be alive?" "Don't know," Mike says. "Let's go uptown and find out something. They should be able to tell us something. Let's go." So Brenda and Mike go uptown to find out what's going on. They get uptown and go to talk to some people to find out more stuff about the house. They walk into a hardware store and talk to a sales clerk. "Yes, may I help you?" "Yes, we were wondering a little about the old Hollow Hills place." The sales clerk went quiet. He says, "Hang on a minute," and walks to the door, locks it, and puts up a closed sign, then pulls the blinds down. They were wondering why he was doing that. The clerk walks back to them and says, "Okay, here is the news on that house." And he tells them. They couldn't believe it. "Yes," the clerk says, "but don't tell anyone I told you this, okay? If you tell anyone, I might not be here." He walks back and fixes everything and puts the open sign back on the door. Brenda looks at Mike. "Something doesn't seem right, Mike." "Yeah, you're right, Brenda. Something doesn't seem right," Mike says. "Let's go." "Hang on." Brenda walks to the side and looks down a hallway. In a dark corner of the building were two dark eyes, darker than night, looking at Brenda. "Oh my goodness," Brenda says to herself, looking at the dark eyes. Then all at once the dark eyes were gone, like they were never there. Brenda runs to Mike. "We need to go, Mike," Brenda says to him. "What's wrong?" "I'll tell you in the truck." As Brenda and Mike walk out the door to leave, the clerk walks up to them. The clerk says, "My name is Tony Chambers. If you need to talk about anything else, call me." He hands them his number, looking around like he was scared of something. "Well, I need to get back to work," Tony says. "Have a great day," he says to Mike and Brenda. As Tony was turning to walk back inside the hardware store, Brenda grabs him by the arm and says, "I saw black eyes darker than the night in there." Tony starts to shake. "You did?" Brenda says, "Yes." "What is it?" "I can't say here," he whispers to her. "Call me tonight and I'll tell you." "All right," Brenda says. "I'll call you to find out more." "Okay," Tony says, and walks back inside the hardware store. Mike and Brenda get in the truck and sit there talking. "Something doesn't seem right," Brenda says. Mike says, "Yeah, something is going on. Weird here." "Yeah," Brenda says, "and I am going to find out what it is." "Me too," Mike says. "It just seems funny. No one is hardly outside, and if they are, they look at us funny, like we are bad people. Yeah, and it just doesn't add up to me at all, Mike. Hey, Mike says, let's go to the courthouse and see what is there. Okay, Brenda says, let's go. Mike starts up the truck and drives down Halloween Drive to go to the old courthouse on the hill to see what they can find. Chapter 11, Surprising News. They pull up at the courthouse, park the truck, and get out, starting up the walkway to the courthouse. As Brenda is walking up, people are looking at her funny, like they hate her. She stops walking. What's wrong? Mike says. About that time, she hears that voice in her ear again, saying softly, leave this place. You are in danger. Brenda says to Mike, something told me to leave this place and said we are in danger, Mike. Oh, we are okay, Brenda, Mike says. Let's go, and starts walking up the steps to the courthouse. Brenda looks up in the courthouse and sees a man in a Civil War uniform standing and watching her. Brenda drops her head and looks at the ground, hoping it was not real. Then she looks back up at the window, and the ghostly Civil War man is still there, but with a hangman's rope in his hand, holding it and pointing at Brenda's neck, smiling from ear to ear. Brenda drops her head again and yells out, Mike! Come here! Mike runs over. What's wrong, Brenda? She starts crying, slowly pulling her head up. Mike, do you see anything in that window? She points. No, Brenda, I don't see anything there except a bird on the outside of the window. Brenda looks and nothing is there. I think we need to leave. But why? Mike says. I'll tell you in the truck, Brenda says. So Mike and Brenda walk back down to the truck and get in. They sit and wait. Mike turns to Brenda. What is wrong, Brenda? What did you see? Mike says. Mike, I saw a Civil War man standing in the window with a hangman's rope in his hand, and he pointed right at me. Mike's mouth dropped. Wow, he says. Well, if you saw that and heard that voice, I think we need to leave. You're right, Brenda says. Let's go. So Mike turns the key. Nothing. Dang, Mike says. What's wrong with this truck? I just got it a week ago, dang it. Mike gets out and tries to figure out what is wrong with the truck. Brenda sits there, worried, thinking, what am I going to do? Brenda pulls down a mirror to wipe her tears from her eyes with a cloth. She looks at herself in the mirror and says, why? The next thing you know, she sees a woman's face slowly turning in the mirror, in slow movement, yelling out, please help me! Brenda drops her mirror and screams out loud, help! Mike runs back to the truck window on Brenda's side. Are you okay, honey? No, Mike, hold me. Mike opens the door and holds Brenda. What's wrong, honey? I saw a face in the mirror, Mike, yelling out, please help me. It's okay, Brenda. I think I got it fixed. What was wrong with it? Brenda says. I think it was flooded, but it should work now. Mike gets in the truck and starts it up. Let's go home, Brenda. Okay, Mike. So Mike starts back down the road to his house. As they are passing by Brenda's house, the house seems like it is watching her like a hawk, like it knew where she was last. Mike parks the truck and starts inside with Brenda. Maybe he might call you, Brenda. I hope so, Mike, Brenda says. And after they shut the door, two black eyes pop up and say, one more trip I need to make to the hardware shop, and laugh in a deep voice, then slowly vanish. Chapter 12. The waiting Brenda sits inside on the couch, trying to calm down from what had happened to her at the courthouse and in Mike's truck. She sits thinking, should I call him or not to ask more about the house? She sits and thinks and decides she will call, so she picks up the phone and calls. Ring, ring, ring. Nothing. She thinks, dang, I wonder where he is. He told me to call him. Brenda hangs up the phone and tells Mike, no one would answer the phone. Mike says, that's weird. He should have answered the phone. That's not like him. Brenda, oh no, Tony. Mike says, I have been to his shop before to get stuff to work on the house. He seems really cool. Brenda gets up and says to Mike, I am going to take a shower if that's okay with you, Mike. Mike says, yeah, can I come and watch you? Brenda laughs out loud. Okay, only if you wash my back, baby. Mike's eyebrow rises up. Oh, really? Yeah, Brenda says. Okay, he says. So Brenda gets undressed in front of Mike. He smiles and slowly kisses Brenda on the neck and starts slowly kissing her. Brenda gets in the tub with bubbles all over her, candles on the side of the bathtub. Mike lights each one while watching Brenda, smiling, thinking she could be the one for him. After lighting the candles, Mike walks over to Brenda and says, "May I wash your back for you?" Brenda smiles. "Yes, Mike." Mike washes her back and slowly washes around her front and says, "Brenda." About that time, the phone rings. Mike jumps and runs to answer the phone. "Hello?" he says. "Yes, this is Tony." "Oh, Brenda was trying to call you, man, but no one answered the phone. Is everything okay with you?" He stops talking for a minute. "Are you there?" Mike says. "Yes. Can you guys meet me at the foot of your house?" "Okay," Mike says. Tony starts to say something, then the phone clicks like he hung up. Mike says, "Tony? Tony? Tony, you there, man?" The phone was dead. "Oh man," Mike says and hangs the phone up and runs upstairs and tells Brenda. "What?" Brenda says. "Yeah," Mike says. Brenda says, "Let me get dressed and let's go down and meet him." So Brenda jumps from the bathtub and hurries to get dressed. Mike stands downstairs waiting for Brenda. They get ready and run out the door. They run down to the bottom of the driveway and wait for him. Brenda says to Mike, "Do you think he will show up or not?" "Yeah, if the ghost doesn't get him first." "Mike, I hope not. I need to find out about this house." "So, Mike," Brenda says, "how do you know Tony?" "I know him. He's nice. I go to his hardware shop to get nails and stuff like that to work on my house." "Oh," Brenda says, "that's cool." "Yeah," Mike says, "I fixed my back porch from using a book I got from Tony's shop." "Yeah, it is a nice porch." "Thanks," Mike says. About that time, Tony pulls up and parks his car in the driveway. "You okay, Tony?" Mike says. "You look like you've seen a ghost, man." "Yeah, I am okay, Mike," Tony says, looking all around like someone is watching him. "Look, Mike and Brenda, I can't go home. They're watching me." "Who is watching you?" Mike says. "The soldiers from that house." "What?" Brenda says. "Yes," Tony said. "One of them told me not to talk to you guys, but I can't do that." "Oh my goodness," Brenda says. "That's why I said I can't go back home," Tony says, looking around. "Tony, if you want to, you can stay here with me and Brenda." "That's okay, Mike. Please get out of here, you guys. They might get you next. Please leave while you can." He sits down in the car and starts it up. "Tony," Mike says. "Don't go, man. It's okay." Tony says, "I am leaving town." "Don't go," Mike says. "Stay here. You will be okay. I'll watch after you and Brenda." "That's okay. I got my stuff packed up in the car. I'm going to my sister's house in Tennessee. She lives in Knoxville, in a home downtown. Call me when you get there. You got my phone number. Call me, okay?" "All right," Tony says. Tony pulls out of the driveway and starts down the road to go to his sister's house. "You think he will be okay, Mike?" Brenda says. "Yeah, I think he will be okay. Let's go inside. It's getting cold fast out here." "Oh, okay," Brenda says, walking into the house. The cool breeze picked up, then a hand came up from the ground, and the man in a Civil War outfit looked around with a smile on his face from ear to ear. "There will be a hanging tonight," he said, and walked down the road the way Tony went. Chapter 13. Nightmare. Tony starts down the road that night. He turns the radio on, looking around, praying everything will be fine. He turns the radio to some soft music, takes a deep breath, and calms down, thinking everything will be okay now. Then he hears the radio change to some creepy song he has never heard before in his life, so he changes the radio back. He starts listening again, thinking it's okay. He grabs a drink and grabs a smoke, thinking everything will be okay. Then the radio changes back to the creepy music again. He yells, "Oh my!" and pulls the car over to the side of the road and says, "Okay, everything is going to be all right." Then he starts the car up and starts back out on the road, thinking everything is okay. He turns the music back on and starts listening to Barry White singing to the music. He looks in the rearview mirror and sees cars passing him left and right. He looks forward and keeps driving, his eyes getting heavy. He pulls the car off to a motel to rest. He gets out and walks in, asking for a room for the night. He gets the room, walks out, gets his stuff, and goes in for the night. Tony gets ready and lays down for the night. He turns the TV off and starts to go to sleep. The ghost arrives, walking through the walls looking to find Tony. The ghost, while looking, sings a song. I'm going to get that boy and hang him like a low-down dirty dog. I'm going to get that boy and hang him like a low-down dirty dog, singing the song while looking for him from room to room. Then Tony gets up to go use the bathroom. He walks half asleep and runs right into the ghost face first. He screams like a baby. The ghost, looking at him right in the eyes, black as the ace of spades, says, I found my low-down dirty dog. Tony screams and tries to run from the ghost, but the ghost grabs him and says, now why do you want to go and do something like that? Come here, boy. Tony falls down on his knees saying, please don't kill me, please. I won't tell anyone anything. The ghost, looking and smiling with the hangman's rope in his hand, says, no, please don't. The ghost grabs Tony and puts him on a chair, tying his hands together, and puts the hangman's noose around his neck. Any last words? Yes, Tony says. Don't do this. The ghost says, sorry, partner, and kicks the chair out from under him, leaving him hanging from the light. The ghost says, one down and two more to go, and laughs out loud in his deep voice. He turns and starts back out the door as a light shines around him and vanishes with him. Brenda sits and waits for Tony to call them, but no answer. Then the phone rings. She hears a voice saying, hey, have you seen Tony? He was supposed to be here. Brenda says, who is this? This is Tony's sister, Misty. Oh, hi, hun, Brenda says. Misty says, hi. Brenda says, did you try to call his phone? Yes, he said he was going to stay at this motel for the night because he was tired, sleepy. I say he was tired and might have fallen asleep and can't hear the phone. Yeah, you might be right, Brenda. Thanks, Misty says. I'll try in the morning to call him. Okay, Brenda says. Sweet dreams, Misty. You too, Brenda. Peace out, Brenda says. Night, night, Misty says and hangs up. Brenda walks upstairs out of Mike's house and gets in bed with Mike, leans over and kisses Mike on the cheek. Sweet dreams, honey, Mike says back to Brenda. You too, honey, Brenda says. She leans over, turns off the light, and lays next to Mike with her arm across him and falls off to sleep. Chapter 14. Hung one way, Brenda wakes up and looks over to see Mike, but Mike was gone. She yells out, Mike! 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 He runs up the stairs. What's wrong, Brenda? Is everything okay? Yes, I thought. Oh, never mind. What were you doing, honey? Oh, Mike says, stay here. I'm going to bring you something. It's a surprise for you. Oh, Brenda says, okay, I'll sit here and wait. Mike runs down and prepares Brenda a breakfast fit for a king. He walks up the stairs with the breakfast on a tray with a rose in a vase. Brenda sits in bed, smiling from ear to ear. Mike turns the corner, and Brenda's mouth almost drops to the ground. Oh my, honey! She almost starts to cry. Honey, Brenda says, I love this. It is so great. She claps her hands, smiling and bouncing up and down in the bed. Mike says, well, I'm happy you love it, honey. Thank you so much. Mike sits down next to her and drinks his coffee. He grabs his remote to turn on the TV and looks over at Brenda and smiles. Brenda looks back at Mike and smiles, thinking, this is the man of my dreams. Mike turns the TV on to watch the morning news on Channel 16. He sits back and watches. Next thing you see, a flash news update. Down on Maryville Lane, at a motel walkway, a man was found hanged last night on a light. Brenda and Mike stop and look at one another and say, no, it can't be. They look back at the TV. The newsman, Mark Johnson, says, the guy, Tony Chambers, checked in last night to get some rest. The woman who owns the motel says to Mark Johnson. Brenda and Mike's heart stops. Oh no, Mike says, it's Tony. Oh no, Brenda says. She stops eating, puts her hands on her mouth, and starts to cry. Mike turns to Brenda saying, it's okay, Brenda. I'm here for you. She sets her tray down, leans on Mike, and starts crying. While holding Brenda, Mike says, it's okay, honey. I'm here, holding her in his arms. I won't let anything hurt you, honey, looking back at the TV while the news is on. Brenda raises up, drying the tears from her eyes. What are we going to do, Mike? Don't you worry, I'll take care of things, honey. Okay, Brenda says, I'll try and sit here, relax, and try to calm down. Yes, Mike says, you need to sit, and I'll take care of everything. Mike walks out of the room, goes down the stairs to call some of his friends who knew Tony to let them know there will be a funeral arrangement for Tony. Brenda sits upstairs in the bed, trying to calm down from what happened. She turns the TV off. The TV turns itself back on. Brenda grabs the remote and turns it off again. The TV turns back on. She looks up and sees something on the TV. A man in a Civil War outfit just standing there on the TV, looking at Brenda really mean. He holds up a hangman's noose and says, "2 down and 2 to go," laughing in a deep voice. Brenda screams, drops the remote, and runs out of the room. She runs down the stairs crying and yelling, "Mike!" Mike drops the phone out of his hands, thinking something had gotten Brenda. He turns to run to her and runs right into Brenda. "Mike!" Brenda says, crying. Mike grabs Brenda and holds her next to him. "What's wrong?" "Come with me," Brenda says. "I've got to show you this." "What's on the TV?" When they get to the room, the TV is off. "What were you wanting to show me, Brenda?" Mike says. Brenda looks at the TV. "There was something on the TV, Mike." "What was it?" Mike says. Brenda sits him down and tells him what had happened, crying. Mike holds Brenda once again in his arms, saying, "Nothing is going to hurt you, baby. I'm here with you. I am your knight." Brenda starts calming down from crying so hard. There, Mike says. "You calm down." So Mike and Brenda walk back down the stairs. After they leave the bedroom, the TV turns back on, saying, "Your time is coming very soon, you two," laughing out loud in a deep voice, and then turns off. Chapter 15, Overgone. The nightmare. Brenda and Mike were downstairs. Mike walked over to the coffee machine and grabbed a cup of coffee. "Everything is okay, Brenda," he said, handing Brenda a cup of coffee. "Thanks, honey. I'm a little shook up from everything." "It's okay, honey," Mike said. "You go lay down on the couch and relax." Mike walked Brenda into the living room. He got a blanket from his chair and put it around Brenda. "There, you feel better, honey?" "Yes, thank you, sweetie." Mike leaned down and gave Brenda a kiss on the lips and smiled. "It will be okay, honey. I'm here." He walked over and grabbed the phone and started calling Tony. Brenda leaned over and grabbed a book and started reading it slowly, drinking her coffee and warming up next to a warm, burning fire. The window showed the house that she had paid for. Looking out the window of Mike's house, she saw a light flashing on and off. Brenda rubbed her eyes. Mike was facing away from Brenda, talking, and the light flashed more. "Mike," Brenda said. "1 minute," Mike said to the person on the phone. "Yes, Brenda," Mike said. Brenda looked back up at the house and the light was gone. "Oh, nothing, Mike." "Okay, honey." And he turned back to the phone and started talking again. She thought to herself, "It must be the house trying to tell me something, but I wonder what it is." "Mike," Brenda said. Mike said, "Hang on." "Yes, Brenda," Mike said again. "After you're done, can we go over to my house and check my mail?" "That's fine," Mike said, and he turned back and finished talking to the person on the phone. Mike turned to Brenda. "Okay, I'm off the phone." "Who was that, Mike?" Brenda said. "Oh, that's Michael, Tony's brother. He said he will be over around 7 p.m. tonight to talk to us." "Oh, okay," Brenda said. "So," Mike said, "how about that mail?" "Okay," Brenda said. "Let's go check it. I haven't checked the mail in 3 days." "Okay," Mike said. "Let's go." So Mike and Brenda started out the door and walked off the steps. Brenda looked up. "Man, it looks like it's going to rain." "Yeah," Mike said, "and it looks like a bad storm is coming too." "Yeah," Brenda said. They started walking to Brenda's mailbox. She saw the gargoyle on the mailbox was gone. Brenda said, "What the?" and ran to the mailbox. "It's gone," Brenda said. "What's gone, Brenda?" Mike said. "The gargoyle that was on my mailbox, Mike. It's gone." "That's wild," Mike said. "Don't worry, Brenda. It might be somewhere around here, I bet." Brenda went to open the mailbox and found a big package. "I wonder what this is," she said, looking at the front of it. "It has your name on it, Brenda," Mike said. "Let's open it in the house." "Okay, all right," Brenda said. They closed the lid to the mailbox and started back to Mike's house. They walked into the house, set the package down on the table, and got a knife to open it up. Brenda said, "Let's get something to drink. It's hot outside." "Yeah," Mike said. So they got a drink of tea and sat down at the table and started to open the package. "Look, Brenda, it's from Leonard down the street." "Who is that, Mike?" He's a nice guy, Brenda. He sends everyone some cookies who moves into the neighborhood. Oh, Brenda said. That's sweet. Yeah, we call him Friendly Leonard. How nice, Brenda said. Open it up, Mike. I want to see the cookies he made. Oh, okay, Mike said. Mike started to open the package up and started to reach in. Oh my, what is that smell? Don't know, Brenda, but it smells bad. Closing the package back. Maybe the cookies were bad, Brenda said. Might be. Let me hold it in the light and see, Mike said. He stood up and opened the package again and looked down in it. Oh my, Mike said. What? Brenda said. Mike dropped the package and ran outside to throw up. Brenda saw half of a face on the table. Brenda screamed out, "Ah!" and ran out the door screaming. Mike grabbed Brenda. It's okay, honey. What is going on, Brenda? She said. I don't know, Brenda, but that was Leonard. What was left of him? Let me call the cops. Okay, Brenda said. I'll sit here on the steps. Okay, and calm down. Okay, all right, Brenda said. Mike walked back into the house to call the cops, and he looked over, and the package was gone, and so was half of Leonard's face. Mike ran out of the house saying, Brenda! What, Mike? Did you move his face? No, I ran out right after you. Well, he's gone, and the package is gone too. What? Brenda said. Yeah, it's gone, Mike said. Come look. So they walked in, and half of his face and the package were gone, like it was never there. Oh my, Brenda said. Do you think the ghosts are messing with us? Yeah, Mike said. I think they are. They ran out to see if the gargoyle was there, and it was. Brenda, Mike said, I am scared. It's okay, Mike said, holding Brenda. Mike Yee. Chapter 16. Eyes Wide Open. That night, Brenda and Mike got ready for Michael, who was coming over to see them. Brenda put her long black dress on and her earrings and makeup, while Mike got dressed in the bathroom in his black suit. The doorbell rings. Mike looks out and says, It's not 7 yet. Brenda jumps on the bed and pulls the covers over her head, scared something else bad was going to happen. It's okay, Mike says to Brenda. Mike puts on his shoes and says, Hang on, I'm coming. Mike runs down the stairs and runs to the door. He opens the door, and there was Michael. Hi, man, Michael says. Hey, Michael, man, you scared me. What's wrong? Michael says to Mike. Oh, nothing. You look like you're scared, man. I'm fine, come in. Okay, Michael says. Mike closes the door and yells out, Brenda, Michael is here. Brenda jumps from the bed out from under the covers. I'm coming, Mike, and fixes herself up a little more. So, Michael, how you been doing? I've been doing better. Just heard over Tony. Yeah, Mike says, we all are. Tony was a good man. Yeah, Michael says, we went fishing just last week and got a 7-pounder. Yeah, cool, Mike says. Brenda walks down the stairs. Hi, Tony, how are you? Michael almost drops his mouth on the floor. Wow, he says, whispering in Mike's ear. She is so good looking. Hi, Michael, Brenda says, walking to Michael. And may I say, you look lovely tonight in that long black dress. Brenda smiles. Thank you, blushing. Would you like a drink? Mike says. Yes, please. Let's go to the living room and sit and talk. Okay, cool, Michael says. Brenda, I'll get some snacks for us, Mike says, and Michael says, we'll meet you in the living room. Okay, Brenda says. So, Mike, where did you find her at? She is hot, Michael says. She lives right next door. Wow, Michael says. I would not be able to do that, Michael says. I would be right with her every day, he says, laughing out loud. I bet you would, Mike says, laughing out loud. Brenda walks in with snacks. Thank you, Brenda, Michael says and takes a bite. Thanks, honey, Mike says, and takes one and takes a bite. These are great, Brenda. You are a good cook. Thank you, Michael. Yes, Mike says. She is a good cook. She can fix some mean steaks on the grill that are great. I bet, Michael says. Oh, thanks, Brenda says while setting down the tray and sitting in a seat drinking her tea. So, Michael says, where is my drink, Mike? Oh, I forgot, laughing out loud. Here is some wine, and pours some in 2 glasses for both of them. Thanks, Michael says. So how is your family doing, Michael, over Tony? They're doing okay, just really hurt over his passing. He seems so young and full of life, he says. Yeah, Mike says. He was a good man to everyone. Never bothered anyone. Yeah, Michael says. I will find out who did it and kick their butt for it. So Michael, Brenda says, how is your sister Misty doing? She is doing okay. Just really hurt over it. Been upset. Crying every night. Hoping he would show up. But nothing. Yeah, Brenda says. Tell her I'll talk to her at the funeral tomorrow. That would be nice of you too, Brenda. Tell her if she needs to talk to anyone to call me anytime. Okay, Michael, thanks. I will tell her. Well, guys, I need to go. It's getting late, and they will be waiting up on me to come home. Okay, Michael, Brenda and Mike say. Thanks for a wonderful evening, and we'll see you tomorrow for the funeral. Okay, see you then, Michael. Okay, take care. You too, Mike and Brenda say, waving goodbye to him at the door. Michael gets in the car and starts to leave. Oh, Michael says. What, Mike? Be there at 2 o'clock. That's when we are going to have the showing. Okay, take care. You too. And Michael drives off. Mike and Brenda look around for anything and walk back in. Wow, they say. Man, what a night. Yeah, Brenda says, walking to get the glasses and food to put up. Yeah, what a night, she says, walking by Mike. Yeah, Mike says. Want to lay down and watch TV? Nah, Brenda says. Want to go upstairs and lay down on the bed? Yeah, race you, Brenda says after putting the stuff away. Brenda runs up the stairs and jumps on the bed. I beat you, Mike says, running behind her. Yeah, lucky, laughing. Uh-huh, Brenda says. So Brenda and Mike get undressed and turn in for the night. Man, what a day, Mike says to Brenda. Yeah, tell me about it. So true, so weird and scary too. Yeah, Mike says. So Brenda leans to Mike and softly kisses him on the face and says, Honey, want to mess around a little? Okay, Mike says, and they softly kiss and make love. Brenda and Mike made love for 2 hours. After doing so, Brenda turns to Mike and says, Sweet dreams, honey. Chapter 17, Watching Eyes. That night while Brenda and Mike were asleep, the light was on in her house, not knowing the ghost was planning something again. The head of the ghost said, Troops, file in line. We need to take care of some business around here, smiling. The troops filed in line with their swords near them, sharp as a razor blade and dirty, ghostly Civil War outfits that glowed in the dark. The head ghost had a black glowing mustache, and his face was as white as a sheet and cold black eyes that could run right through you, and an evil smile that could make you run and scream for help. The head ghost's name is General Lee Smith, the most devilish man that walked on Earth. He would cut your eyes out if you looked at him wrong. He stands 6 feet tall, with dark hair that glows, and his horse, solid white with dark black eyes, from the dead and beyond. General Lee Smith walked up and said, Let's get ready for Plan 2, laughing out loud. We got a nice surprise for them, don't we, men? Laughing again out loud. Oh yes, the troops said, laughing out loud. Good, the general said. Okay, get to it, men, while I stand and watch my plans fall into place, smiling really big. This is a good night, he says to his horse, smiling. The horse shakes his head up and down, then turns to look at Brenda and Mike asleep. You may sleep tonight, but tomorrow's another day, laughing. Come on, let's go, and turns to walk from the window laughing and walks in a shining light with his horse. The house goes, oh no! The house flashes the light in the window to warn Brenda and Mike. Brenda gets up and walks to the bathroom, half asleep, to use it while not knowing the house was trying to warn her of the troops and what they were going to do. She gets up and washes her hands off and starts back to bed. Looking down, she sees a light flashing. What is that? She says and walks to the window and pulls the shades to one side. What in the world is going on over there? Flash! Flash! Off and on, the light flashes in her bedroom window. She thinks, why is the light doing that for? Brenda sees the light go out. She stands for a few minutes to see if the light was going to come back on. Nothing. So Brenda turns to walk away to go to bed. She feels a cold breeze blow by her. It came from under the window in the room with her. She stands still, scared of what it might be. The cold breeze blows to the other side of the room. Then at once, the cool breeze turns into a dark shadow right in front of Brenda. Her eyes get big, then she covers her mouth, afraid to speak. The shadow says, It's me, Brenda, the house. I need to tell you something. She calms down. What's wrong? She says. It's about tomorrow, the house says. What about tomorrow? Brenda says to the shadow. Mike wakes up, half awake. Who you talking to, Brenda? No one, Mike. Come back to bed, Brenda says. Okay, I will in just a minute. The shadow hides in the dark, watching Mike and Brenda. Mike falls back down on the pillow and goes back to sleep. Brenda looks at the shadow. I must go. Not safe here for me. They're near. How near? Brenda says to the shadow. Very near. They won't come in here, will they? She says. No, not yet they won't. But be careful, the shadow says. We'll talk later. I gotta go. They're here. Then at once, the shadow was gone. Oh no, Brenda says to herself. The shadow didn't tell me what was going to happen tomorrow. Oh no. I hope the shadow comes back later. Brenda walks to the window and looks out at her house and sees a Civil War man in the window holding a knife and laughing at her. Brenda shuts the shades, scared they might come get her. She peeks out again with one eye. Looking, the ghost was gone. She walks back to Mike's bed and gets in. She prays, Please don't let them come over here, Lord. Please don't let them. Brenda opens her eyes and lays back and gets next to Mike to fall asleep. Mike wraps his hands around her and says, It's okay, honey. I'm here to watch over you, honey. She smiles and turns over and looks out, thinking, What is going to happen tomorrow? I wonder what it is, and falls off to sleep.